Since 1500s, India saw the entry of various foreign powers in the garb of traders. First came the Dutch and Portuguese, who were thwarted by Rani Abakka Chauta and Raja Martanda Varman at the Konkan coast. In the 1600s, the French joined the party, and then came the British. Towards the middle of the 18th century, the Dutch and the Portuguese were marginalized. The French settled in Pondicherry and few other coastal towns. The British East India Company that set foot on Bharat for trading in the year 1600 expanded into a military power. The British East India Company won over the French and established supremacy over southern Bharat and Bengal. It was a necessity for the British to establish their paramountcy wherever they stepped foot on. They took up to arms, subjugated kingdoms one by one, and eventually brought the entire country under them. The polygars of southern Bharat, who put up spirited resistance against the British, were ruthlessly killed. The Marathas, who posed a serious threat for more than 4 decades, were eventually nullified. They spread fear and discontent amidst all sections of people: peasants, tribes, merchants, and members of princely states. Yet, Bharat was the land of early universities, and the Bharatiyans stemmed out of a holistic and advanced education system. The country also had a diverse culture, language, and lifestyles, and religious systems, and their diversity completely perplexed the British. How would they be able to subjugate and colonize such a superior and diverse mass of people? The British contemplated the idea of using the same diversity against the native powers and crafted the 3-pronged strategy to overpower Bharat. 1. To divide us on various fronts: ethnicity, color, caste, and language. 2. To destroy the native education system and to impart English education. 3. To make the native Bharathiyans forget their glorious past. The British concocted the Aryan invasion theory as a basis of seeds of poison. As the name says it, it was nothing but a theory to drive their agenda. According to the theory, a nomadic and barbaric tribe from Central Asia called the Aryans, who were fair-skinned, entered India about 3,500 years ago and drove down the local inhabitants, the Dravidians, who were dark-skinned, to the south. They crushed the locals, their language and their culture, and established Sanskrit and their way of life. They massacred the natives who resisted. They wrote the Vedas too. After you just heard this, are you proud to be associated with the Vedas? No, right? This is precisely what they wanted the Bharatiyans to feel: break their pride, alienate them from their roots. William Jones found similarities between Sanskrit and European languages like Greek and Latin. Accepting the superiority of Sanskrit would imply accepting the antiquity of the language as well. So through this mythical and baseless theory, Sanskrit language was made foreign to Bharat, and thus English was accepted as the language of colonized slaves. Now, for Aryan invasion theory to be accepted as history, they started to look for evidences. When they did not find any, they created one. Max Muller, a German scholar with a superficial knowledge of Sanskrit, attempted to translate the Rigvedic hymns. This came very handy for the proponents of Aryan invasion theory. Rig Veda 9:41-1 speaks of evil forces being destroyed by divinity, just as darkness is driven away by brightness of sunshine. But the same was interpreted as the fair skin driving away the native dark skin. Thus, a case for clash between the two groups on racial grounds was created. This incorrect literary translation became the evidence of a speculative theory. Even today, this theory adorns our history textbooks, despite being debunked by archaeological, genetic, hydrological, climatological evidences. For example, have you heard of the Saraswati Sindhu civilization? The earliest yet advanced civilization of the world. Yet, river Saraswati is called a mythical river. Why? The river is referred in the Rig Veda, Ramayana, Mahabharata, thus extending the historical timeline of Indian history way back from the proposed theory. Modern science has proved that the river completely dried up in 2000 BCE. If the Rig Veda was composed by invading Aryans after 1500 BCE, then could they have hailed a non-existent Saraswati that dried up 500 years before their arrival? Satellite imagery proves that river Saraswati once flowed in present-day Haryana, Rajasthan, and not in Central Asia or Europe. Why is it important for us to call out the fake Aryan invasion theory? Through this absurd theory, Indians have been made to believe Vedas are not Indian, they were composed by foreigners. Sanskrit is of external origin. People practicing Vedas are not native Indians. North Indians are Aryans and South Indians are Dravidians, thus creating a north-south divide. Vedas were written by barbaric and narrow-minded individuals. What we need to understand is that Arya is an attribute a guna that is associated with nobility, seeker of knowledge or light. While Dravida refers to a geographic land, the regions of southern peninsula are mentioned as Pancha Dravida. Now, how can we compare apples and oranges and use this as a basis for ethnic division? How did the British see this fake theory in our system? In India, as knowledge was given prime importance, there were lakhs of patashalas. They taught us Vedas, law, astronomy, poetics, music, grammar, manufacturing, and medical sciences, to name a few. In fact, in most patashalas, education was free. Did you know 70% of the students belong to socially deprived communities? Records say that most common books used in schools were Ramayana, Mahabharata, and Bhagavata. Imagine a 10-year-old student of those times could identify at least 10 different herbs and shrubs that grew around his or her home. Now enters Thomas Babington Macaulay. He cunningly inserted the narrative that the native schools of learning and practice culture were inferior and unscientific. Through this memorandum of Indian education, he recommended that English should become the medium of learning, printing of Arabic and Sanskrit books should be avoided, government should grant funding to English schools instead of Oriental schools, civil services and government job opportunities should be made available only for people with English speaking skills. Hence, the English Education Act was passed. Patashalas and Gurukulas were shut across the country. As a result, literacy dwindled. Not everyone could afford education. There was social imbalance and the economy failed. There was widespread poverty because of lack of jobs. Vernacular literature and languages were lost. Finally, Macaulay achieved what he wanted: a class of persons Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, in opinions, in morals, and in intellect. The British systematically belittled everything that has its origin in ancient Bharat. The English education prevented masses from learning Sanskrit, which eventually led to a situation where these ancient texts stayed out of reach for common public. Having blinded the Indians to the glory of a past and portraying India in bad light, the British made us look at the West in awe. We are still gripped by that colonial hangover even today.